everyone. Thank you all for coming to the Psych Department poster presentation. We will be presenting our experiment on recall and recognition titled The Effects of Retrieval Technique on Memory Accuracy. Before we begin highlighting our experiment, we will provide insight on recall and recognition.
Recall and recognition are two similar yet different memory retrieval tactics. Recall can be defined as retrieval of information from the memory without a cue, the retrieval of related details. On the other hand, recognition is a response to a sensory cue, its ability to recognize a piece of information as similar. When running experiments, people are looking at all types of information, but for experiments like the one we created, we mostly focused on our hypothesis, which was what group would be more successful, recall or recognition, and we chose recognition. In past experiments that psychologists have put on, their outcome was that recognition was the most successful of the two. Experimenters have used many different ways to show how recognition and recall are compared. From comparing someone's age to their IQ, from seeing how well a pro typer can remember exactly where each key is on a keyboard, to seeing if someone can remember a pair of objects a few moments after they were told, or even the correlation for different colors to different objects, like a red car or blue ball, all the way to the way that we did. They had to try to remember a series of objects that were shown to them for 3 to 5 seconds, and then try to write down what they saw, or they had to pick out of a list of what they saw. All of these experiments are different in their own ways, but what they are similar in is that they show the difference in statistics about how recall and recognition are different. A fun fact that some people may not know about recall and recognition is that it is the oldest and most common form of testing memory development.
I will now be presenting the methods section. The experiment was performed on a class of 24 college students at Saginaw Valley State University. We created 2 groups of 12 slots, and the students were able to blindly choose which group they wanted. However, one student did not participate in the recall group. There are very few materials needed to perform this experiment. The most crucial material needed was a computer or some form of online access due to the fully digital experience. We also needed 15 household objects and the 2 Google Forms we created, one for the recall group and one for the recognition group. We gained online access and began the experiment, creating a Zoom meeting for each of the groups separately. The recognition group received a list of 25 items with their Zoom link, and the recall group received a blank form. Each group was advised not to open or fill out their forms until after the experiment process. They were also told not to take any form of notes while the experiment was in progress. The experimenter's script was read to describe exactly what each of the subject groups was doing for each specific experiment. We began experimentation by showing and naming a sequence of 15 various objects, each for about 3 to 5 seconds. After the recognition group was tested, they were instructed to open the document sent with the Zoom link. This link opened a list of 25 items, 15 of which were shown in the experiment. Subjects then checked off which objects they remembered seeing and sent the form back to the experimenters. After testing the recall group, they were instructed to open the document sent with the Zoom link. Subjects then wrote down which objects they believed they saw and sent the form back to experimenters. Once both groups had finished all the documents and all the documents had been received by the experimenters, we thanked the subjects and closed out the Zoom meetings.
Then, we organized their responses based on what experimental condition group the participant was a member of, the 2 conditions of our experiment being the recall memory technique or the recognition memory technique. Our independent samples t-test revealed that there was a significant difference in the accuracy of memory between the 2 groups, with a t-value of 4.792 and a p-value of less than 0.001. The recognition group resulted with an average of 11.5 correct answers with a standard deviation of 1.51, while the recall group resulted with an average of 8.08 correct answers with a standard deviation of 1.83. These results are clearly represented by the bar chart on the far right side of the poster. As you can see, the lack of overlapping between the error bars backs up the significance of our results. Because of the significant difference displayed in our results, we can confidently reject the null hypothesis.
The outcome of this experiment supported our hypothesis as the recognition group performed better than the recall group, with the recognition group having an average of 11.5 correct answers, while the recall group had an average of 8.08 correct answers. Our findings support past research on this topic, as an experiment conducted in 1964 by Barak found that the recognition group was able to recognize 42% of the 25 nonsense syllables correctly, while the recall group can only recall 14% of the list after the two groups observed the list of 25 nonsense syllables. While the outcome of our experiment supports past research in this field, future improvements could be made. One improvement contains changing the format of the experiment. Since the experiment was conducted online, external factors could alter the outcome. For instance, Wi-Fi connection. Poor Wi-Fi connection would result in poor resolution, making it more difficult to see the objects as they were displayed on the screen, or it can make it more difficult to hear the names of the objects as they were presented. Another change that we would implement in the design includes increasing the sample size. We had 12 participants in the recall group and 11 participants in the recognition group. By increasing the sample size, we would strengthen our findings and make it more generalizable. Despite these changes to the experiment, our outcome was most favorable, and the experiment was overall successful. The online platform allowed us to ensure that participants weren't able to record the names of the objects they saw, while also ensuring that their answers on the Google Forms were confidential, since only we were able to look at them and it was not accessible to the public. Furthermore, this experiment successfully examined recognition and recall and determined that recognition performed better than the recall group. Our findings serve as a helpful source on memory and retention, and further opens up future opportunities to research this phenomenon and how the two memory groups differentiate.